Welcome back. You're watching Morning Live. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. Now, the Credit Ombud is an institution that helps resolve disputes between those that offer credit and those that receive credit. In other words, mediating between consumers and businesses, especially if there are conflicts. Now, the Credit Ombud releases a report every year to update the public on the cases they have been working on. Joining me now is the newly appointed Ombud, Nicky Lala Mohan, and he's joined by somebody who's a consumer and had his issues resolved, Credit Khumalo. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here on Morning Live. Nicky, let's start with you first. Let's talk about that report, that announcement. I mean, let's reflect over the last 2 years and releases. Are we seeing more success stories?
Yes, we are. Morning, Sam, and morning to the viewers. Most definitely, we're seeing more success stories. In general, the year in review, our complaints went up by 50%. We had about 16,000 complaints. The calls received also went up by 30%, some 28,000. And that was because last year we had the credit amnesty, which was due on the 1st of April. So a lot of inquiries, how do I get off the bureau, etc. The disputes opened also increased by 0.2%. We opened 5,800 cases. Disputes closed went down a bit to 6,800, but the average days that we took to resolve a case was 47 days. So in a nutshell, that's the highlights of the year.
Okay, you've only been in your position for 1 month. As you're sitting here, you're fresh. Let's talk about the last 10 years and the existence of the Credit Ombuds and how that has changed the lives of South Africans. But I also have to be honest, and I don't want to sit on the fence here, a lot of people still don't know the work the Credit Ombuds does.
I think you're very correct, and consumer awareness and outreach is probably one of my key objectives during my term. But certainly over the last 10 years, we started with a budget of 12,500. Today we sit with a budget of about 16 million. The number of cases has just escalated. The processes, my predecessor had put wonderful processes in place. So I'm fortunate in that I inherit an organization that is very professional, corporate governance, and very well run.
Let's talk about Simpiwe very quickly, because we're going to actually talk to him towards the end of this interview. But he struggled to have his name removed for a year. He approaches you, and within 2 weeks, his name is cleared. You resolve the issues. I think Simpiwe Khumalo is not a unique case. There are many more Simpiwes out there. How do we interact with those people on the ground? We still hear about people that are handing over their bank cards to people that borrow their money. We're still hearing people that after one payment are listed as blacklisted or ITC listed. How do we make sure that we get your message to the right ears so that there's a right action?
That's the work that's cut out for us in terms of getting the message spread and getting out in malls, getting into... What we're doing now is double impact workshops. What we do is we go to an employer and we do classroom training for their employees. And we go through a whole know your rights kind of, what is a credit report, how do you read it, what is credit, what is prescription, what is induplum, what is an EAO. We educate them. That's been very effective. In fact, yesterday we had a session at Prasa. But you're correct, we need to get out there. There are like 18 million credit active consumers. We are only touching a fraction of what we should be doing. We need to do more.
Let's look at those numbers very quickly. And you mentioned that in your intro as well, that there was a 48% increase in calls, a 60% increase in the number of complaints. What does that tell us about the credit landscape?
Well, we're in a very dynamic environment at the moment. Legislation is being passed. Last year, particularly, the removal of adverse consumer information was very topical. It took up most of our time. But something that we're seeing coming through right now is this so-called garnishee orders, the EAOs. That is going to be the flavor for the year. There's currently a case in Cape Town at the moment, the High Court, where the University of Stellenbosch Law Clinic is taking a class action on behalf of 16 farm workers who have garnishee orders against them that were, obtained by illegal means. So that will set a precedent as to how we deal with garnishes moving forward.
So, Bill, let's include you in this conversation very quickly. Tell me your story, because it took you over a year to get off being blacklisted.
Yes.
You go to the Credit Ombudsman, it takes 2 weeks. What happened?
Okay, I applied for a home loan and I was declined, and I didn't understand why. And then I then applied for a dispute within the credit bureaus. They also tried within 6 months, then they advised me to call Credit Ombudsman. And when I did that, within 2 weeks, it was resolved.
How did you get listed in the first place?
I think one of my banks, what actually happened, I canceled my check account and they did not close it. So it was accumulating interest behind. And they did not inform me either that, you know what, you owe us this amount of money. So within 6 months, they listed me as a bad debt written off. So I didn't even understand what it means, bad debt written off. So when I called one of the ITC, they explained that it means that it's a default and it will stay there for the next 2 years. So I couldn't afford to wait for 2 years. I mean, that's a very long time.
For sure.
So, and then Credit Ombud, they really helped. Within 2 weeks, it was resolved.
You've got about 30 seconds left. Let's talk about legislation here very quickly, Nikki, and how we can make sure that legislation protects more people like Simpiwe.
Sure.
Let's talk about it very quickly. What do we do from a legislation perspective?
We're in a very exciting regulatory landscape. There are two major acts that are coming through. National Credit Amendment Bill will make it compulsory for all credit providers to list correctly and to notify you before listing. But more importantly, in our space, there's the Financial Sector Regulation Bill, which is the Twin Peaks model. You know, the division between prudential and so in that model, what has happened now is that they've defined a credit agreement as a financial product, and those people become financial service providers, and they fall into the net where they've got to belong to an ombud. So it'll give us teeth in moving forward. It'll give us kind of statutory recognition, and in that way we can push more for outreach.
Some exciting things on the cards there. We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me. That is the newly appointed Ombud, Nicky Lala Mohan. Some interesting things in the pipeline. And we were joined by Simpiwe Khumalo, who was one of the consumers who benefited from the hard work that the Credit Ombuds does on a daily basis. You need to find out more. All you can do is Google them. We take an ad break.